Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to The Headlines. I'm your host, Margaret Matibiri. Today on the show, we are joined by the Deputy National Chair for the MDC Alliance, Mr. Tendai Biti. Mr. Tendai Biti, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, Mr. Biti, you have made headlines saying that government was planning to introduce a new currency. Can you talk about that?
It's not me. Government itself has been saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mutuvi has been saying there will be a currency before the end of the year. A new currency. So I haven't made headlines. This is something that they want to do. This is something that they're going to do.
But then you did say that they were going to be unveiling it
so
this week.
Don't butcher the message.
Okay.
Don't butcher the message. ZANU-PF wants to introduce a domestic currency.
Mm-hmm.
They want to retain the Zimbabwean dollar, which is totally unscientific. It is unscientific because it was not the wisdom of any government that led us to dollarize in 2009. It was the market itself. The market totally rejected the Zimbabwean dollar. And the reason why it rejected the Zimbabwean dollar, or the bearer check to be more precise, was that our currency had become an instrument of arbitrage, just like it is right now. And so the market rejected, so we dollarized involuntarily.
Mm-hmm.
When you dollarize involuntarily, it's a reflection of the market losing any confidence whatsoever in the currency. The currency would have been caught in flagrando. The currency would have been caught with its pens down. So trust will never be restored. That's why, as a matter of scientific fact, in the history of economics, in the history of monetary policy and money, there is no country which has dollarized, which has been able to de-dollarize as well, because it's a crisis of confidence.
So basically you're saying because the government has dollarized to begin with, it will not be a smart move to go back to their own currency? Considering the situation that is at hand, at some point people need their currency, but then you are on record saying that re-dollarizing or getting back the Zimbabwean dollar will not be...
Don't speak like a nationalist. There's nothing magical about a currency that you can say at some point people need their own currency. The currency is just a means of exchange.
But then considering...
you ask me questions. Now I'm behaving like Emerson. Let me answer.
Okay.
Yeah. In the scheme of things, money is just an instrument of exchange. And the money itself is on its way out. That's why we have virtual currencies now like Bitcoin. That's why if you go to functional societies, you actually don't need cash. You actually just need your plastic card. So money in the traditional sense that we know it is actually on its way out. But the real issue here, my sister, is that money at the end of the day is an exchange. It's a relationship between your imports and your exports. So to put it simply, money is a reflection of your current account. What are you trading out and what are you buying in? In other words, what are your imports and what are your exports? So if you have a situation such as the one which we have right now, where the current account deficit is in excess of $2 billion, where literally for every dollar that goes out in the form of imports, $3 so for every dollar that comes in as export earnings, $3 are going out as import earnings, you've got a problem, because you've got a deficit of 3:1. So under those circumstances, you have to be very careful to introduce your own currency, because your own currency will just be a reflection of that a current account deficit. And as a result, your currency will just be attacked by this mismatch. And that's why you see in the case of Zimbabwe, we had to abandon the Zimbabwean dollar, we had to abandon the bearer check, because we were basically consuming what other countries were doing. So here in Zimbabwe, there's a fundamental problem why it would be wrong to introduce the Zimbabwean dollar. We don't have foreign currency. 80% of what we are consuming in our supermarkets is coming from outside the country. Go to any Pick and Pay supermarket. Secondly, we've got two fundamental products that we can't do away with. We've got fuel that we have been spending almost $1 billion, and last year almost $2 billion on. Then we've got energy, power. So these two things we have to keep on expanding foreign currency. So if you introduce the Zim dollar now, when you've got this huge shortage of foreign exchange, all you are doing is you're just guaranteeing the continued and the accelerated existence of your black market. Secondly, you need the reserves. You have to back that currency with the reserves. There are some economists who think that backed currencies are a thing of the past. Only the United States of America can have that luxury because of the fungibility of the United States dollar and the trust and confidence that the globe as a whole has in the US dollar. So for Zimbabwe, we basically have to back our currency. We have to have reserves that is backing that currency. If it's not backed, then it's as good as leaves that are outside this office. It's as good as bathroom paper. It's not worth the paper it is printed on. And the market will recognize that, and it will push down its value. There are some who are arguing that we already have a currency in the form of a bond note, in the form of an RTGS. So they are therefore arguing that switching over to our currency will be seamless and will have no challenges. I beg to differ fundamentally. The fact that they have hidden and refused to accept the bond note as currency, and the fact that they've insisted that it's a quasi-fiscal currency, they've at least protected the RTGS against the full vagaries of the market. Let them introduce the bond note, and you will see how wild 4th Street is, and you will see the increase in the shortage of foreign currency, and for Tarai, the increase of shortages of goods, in particular fuel, in electricity, and goods in the supermarkets.
Okay, so I am speaking as a layman in this field, considering that you were a finance minister. But then considering the current situation that is there, where we see that people in position of power, specifically those who can sell goods like, for instance, tires, motor spare parts, and the likes, they have resorted to increasing their prices, even in the US dollar pricing. So what do you think is the cure for that? Because apparently the bond note has lost value, which is common knowledge, and the RTGS as well has lost value. And now people have started increasing prices on the US dollar pricing. What would be your comment? What is the way forward from where we are right now?
Yeah. So this economy lacks respect of fundamentals. It doesn't have any fundamentals. It doesn't have any fundamentals. It has no macroeconomic stability. It has no predictability. It's not loyal to any principle because it has been so abused. So what you see, what you are trying to describe as a layperson is merely the existence of a multiple-tier pricing system. So if you go to the market right now, there are basically 4 prices. There's a price in US dollars. There's a price for bond note. There's a price for telegraphic transfer, what we call the RTGS. And then the 4th price is the price for what you would call eco cash, which is basically mobile money transfers. All those things are a reflection of the lack of equilibrium in the economy. The economy has no balance. The economy has no respect to fundamentals. And the problem essentially lies in 3 things. Number 1, we are not producing. We are consuming, but we are not producing. So if you go into Harare right now, if you go into our supermarket, they're full of goods, but those goods are coming from South Africa. If you go to St. Levis Village, you will see amazing vehicles that have been bought by people that are not sustaining an economy. So we have become a dealer economy, a commodity economy, a feja economy. We need to produce, because money or wealth is only created when capital and labor collide and you generate a surplus. In Zimbabwe, the present, as you and I know, there is less than 30% capacity utilization. Many of the huge companies have closed and they keep on closing. If you go to Bulawayo, the factories are being turned into churches. If you go to Harare, the industrial sites, you will see massive grass growing in industry. So we're not producing. And without producing, it doesn't matter what you do, you'll go nowhere. Secondly, is government greed, government appetite. The government has been embarking on deficit financing, just spending money as if it grows on trees. And as I keep on telling people, it's a disease I call fiscalitis. And fiscalitis is a disease where you just spend. And that's what we've been doing. So as a result, we now have a budget deficit that is in excess of 15% of GDP. But the budget deficit per se is not a problem. It's how you monetize it. It's how you cover the gap. And they've been covering the gap by issuing treasury bills. They've issued treasury bills of at least $7 billion, 35% of GDP. They've been borrowing money from the central bank. So you now have this huge deficit, which is not stopping. So it creates conditions for that arbitrage. Then third is the monetary policy disaster. Firstly, the introduction of the bond note. That was a total disaster, because bad money always chases good money. Bad money always chases good money. So the introduction of a quasi-fiscal instrument, of a fiat instrument, of fake money, basically destroyed our monetary system. Then, apart from the introduction, you then adopt the heresy of equating the bond note to the US dollar, when even strong currencies in relative terms like the rand comes from a $400 billion economy. South Africa is a $400 billion economy, but the rand is trading is to 1:15, 1:13. So you therefore need to resolve fundamentals. In the long term, you need to resolve the issue that we are not producing. So our minds must be working at full capacity.
Okay.
Our industry must be working at a full capacity. We need to produce, we need to grow this economy at the rate of 10% GDP growth rate in real terms. Secondly, there has to be fiscal discipline. The government must live within its means. Mnangagwa and his lot must know that in economics, 1 minus 2 is not equal to minus 1. 1 minus 2, it can't. The minute you go into deficit financing, you've got a problem. So there has to be fiscal consolidation. What I used to call, we eat what we kill. Third, we have to deal with the distortions in the monetary side. So we have to demonetize the bond note, remove it completely, demonetize the RTGS system. 2, ring fence and protect balances that are in people's accounts so that people don't lose value again. Third, we have to, in the short term, re-dollarize the economy, strengthen the regime of multiple currencies, re-dollarize the economy. Fourth, and this is a bit in the mid-term, we have to consider joining the Rand Monetary Union. The reason why the Rand is so important is that the US dollar is not sustainable in the long term, because it is a currency that keeps on appreciating in value. In the last 2 years alone, it has appreciated by 19%. So it has made the cost of our exports very high. It has also made this economy so uncompetitive. So you need to devalue the US dollar. But you can't devalue the US dollar because you're not the Federal Reserve. So the only way you can do is not to bring the Zimbabwean dollar, but it is to adopt a weaker currency with international credibility, and that currency is called the Rand.
Okay, but then still you have not answered the question, which I was asking. Which is this? people are still using US dollars, but then they keep on inflating the prices on the US dollar. No matter how much...
I've answered that question.
You did not.
I've said there are distortions in the economy. There's no disequilibrium in the economy.
What is what is the way forward from that? Because this is something
The
that
way
is
forward
that
what
is
I was
affecting.
explaining.
Wait.
The way forward is what I was
The question
explaining.
that I was asking is this. This is what the layman understands. The moment I go into a supermarket and today a product is pegged at $5 and I come back tomorrow and I know that we cannot devalue the US
Can
dollar.
I answer in simpler terms? But I've answered
Okay,
the
can
question.
I at least
No, I
explain the
understand your
question,
I'm
I'm going to?
No, I understand. When I mean by disequilibrium, I'm saying that there's no balance in the economy. Right? Economics is the study of human behavior. Economics. That's why it's a social science, not So when there is no equilibrium, when there's no balances, people react in a certain way. So the price of goods will go up. The price of goods has gone up because number one, we are not producing. So there's no goods in the supermarket. Number two, our wages are low. Only 95% of the people are working. So there's no what economics call aggregate demand. There's weak aggregate demand. There's small salaries, poor disposable incomes. So that's the balance. That's the balance. Third, these goods that are few, they are coming from outside. We have to buy them using the US dollar. So the US dollar itself has become a commodity. Money is a commodity. Itself has become a commodity. All those things are a lack of balance. In simple terms, prices are going up because everything is in short supply. So the US dollar itself must go up. The prices which are indexed ultimately by the US dollar must go up. So that's why I've said before, we are a unique country in that we've bastardized the US dollar. We've bastardized the US dollar. That we've made the US dollar meaningless. In 2007, 2008, if your relative sent you £100 or $100, you'd survive for months. Now it's meaningless because we've bastardized the US dollar, the hard currencies. And we've done that because we have no fundamentals. We have no equilibrium. It's a mentality of shortage. It's a culture of shortage. It's a culture which at the end of the day is basically a culture of lack of confidence. So if we start producing, our farmers are producing, our supermarkets are full. If we start paying people decently, if we adopt a currency that has got strong relationship with the US, all these shortages and all these distortions go away. That's why in the GNU, the common phrase was dollar for two. The US dollar could advance you because the fundamentals were there. The fundamentals are not there now. So in very short and simple terms, these distortions and the prices, they are happening because our economy is badly managed.
Okay.
Two, we are not producing. Simple.
So the SADC chair is on record on a later dated 11 February saying that they were behind the government and that the government was trying by all means necessary to stabilize the situation, saying that it was necessary for the price hikes that we saw recently in fuel. What would be your comment?
I respect SADC very much, but I think that we have a political crisis in this country.
And they were actually responding to that political crisis.
Yes, the political crisis we have is a crisis of legitimacy. Mr. Mnangagwa did not win the election of the 30th of July 2018. And so everything you are seeing is a sign of lack of confidence in the regime that is there. You cannot govern people without their consent. So the public has withdrawn its consent. So we have to resolve that political crisis. We have another crisis, a crisis of gross human rights abuse. Women are being raped in this country. There are hundreds that have been assaulted, hospitalized. Over 1,200 people have been put in prison. The MDC is under attack. 48 of its MPs are either hiding or have run away. Its senior leaders, including myself, are facing persecution and prosecution. All our key leaders in our structures, particularly our organizing secretaries, are under assault. So we have a serious, what the our own Human Rights Commission is described as a systematic attack on human rights. So if SADC wants to be true to the Zimbabwean crisis, they must acknowledge that we have a deep problem, and that problem is not going to go away by the mere issuance of a statement.
Okay.
It won't go away.
So you have been continuously, since the announcement of the results, making reference to the illegitimacy of the government. But then there was given a platform for people to contest those elections, and you made an application to the Constitutional Court for that election results to be nullified. But then there were the issue of V11s, and the laymen, as I have alluded to myself in this instance, became aware of bigger legal terms that we were not aware of. But then there were no V11s that were brought forward to support these claims of illegitimacy. What would be your comment? What was the plan when you approached the Constitutional Court, but you did not have the evidence to back up that application that you were making?
It's become a tired question.
But then it hasn't been answered, and you keep on referring to it, the issue of legitimacy. Yes, now please.
It's a tired question. We respect the outcome of the Constitutional Court decision handed down on the 24th of August, 2018.
You respect it, but you do not accept it.
Allow me to answer.
No, yes, I want to get
So
it.
why are you interfering with me?
No, I'm interfering with you because I want to get exactly where you're coming from, because
So
I do not
let me
want
speak.
to continue asking you
Let me
to read.
speak.
Okay.
It's a tired question. We respect the Constitutional Court. We fully respect our judiciary in this country. After all, I'm a lawyer, and my president is a lawyer. But legitimacy is not imposed by courts. Legitimacy is imposed by the people of Zimbabwe. The people of Zimbabwe voted for Advocate Nelson Chamisa. Nelson Chamisa won the election of the 30th of July 2018. 2.6 million people voted. ZEC on its own revised its result 3 times. 3 times. The announcement that was made on the 3rd of August was an announcement that Emmerson Mnangagwa had won by 2.8%. When we filed our opposing papers, that was reduced to 2.6. When the matter was then eventually heard on the 22nd of August 2018, that had been revised to 2.4. Up until now, not even Emmerson Mnangagwa knows by how much he won the election, because nobody doesn't know. That's why we maintain that we respect the Constitution and the Constitutional Court, but Emmerson Mnangagwa did not win the election of the 31st of July 2018.
Okay, so this tired assertion that you were not prepared for the Constitutional Court and the questions that have been going on, as you have said. You say that the president or the government of President Mnangagwa does not know by how much votes it won. But did you approach the Constitutional Court with the figures that you had won over that government? Because I think basically that's what everyone was looking forward to. And that minute, the hopes of the general citizen were very high, only to be disappointed at the last minute. Considering that, as you have said, you are a man of the law as well as Advocate Chamisa. But then you seemed to be shortcoming in these issues. How many votes, by how much votes did you win against President Mnangagwa, as you say that he does not know by how much votes he also won?
I will not revisit the Constitutional Court. I will not reduce this interview into another court petition.
Okay.
I've made it very clear that we respect the judgment of the Constitutional Court, but the judgment of the Constitutional Court does not impose legitimacy on Emmerson Mnangagwa. It is the people of Zimbabwe, and the people of Zimbabwe are very clear who won. That's why the market is what it is. You can rig an election, but you can't rig legitimacy. You can rig an election, you can't rig the supermarket. You can rig an election, you can't rig the gas station. And that's why they can't govern this country.
Okay. But then it is common knowledge that we have, if I'm not mistaken, 150 rural constituencies versus 60 urban constituencies. And there have been reports that this has been the rigging machine for the ruling party, considering that it is a stronghold in rural areas. And no matter how much the opposition parties become popular with the masses, they only have 60 constituencies in the urban areas where they are guaranteed that they're going to win. But then there's still that 150, and that those differences where we have 150 rural constituencies where we have rural structures consisting of chiefs and other structures in that setup that obviously, and as has been alluded to earlier, by the chiefs getting bribed and, as people would like to say, getting cars and the likes. Those are the strongholds in the rural areas. What would be your comment on those illegalities?
The problem is that you're no longer answering, you're asking questions.
I am asking you a question.
You are now giving your own version.
No.
So I think we should exchange.
150 rural constituencies and 60 urban constituencies.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't make a difference.
Make a difference. The MDC is popular. It's the most popular party in this country. You'll find it anyway. I, in this past election, went to every corner of Zimbabwe. Every rural corner of Zimbabwe. From Chipinge, Chimanimani, Binga, Dete, Plumtree, Chiredzi, and so forth. People of Zimbabwe believe in Nelson Chamisa. People of Zimbabwe believe in the Movement for Democratic Change Alliance. That's why we have constantly won this election. We won the 2002 election. We won the 2008 election. And that is fact.
Mr. Biti, why did you flee the country just after the election?
They wanted to kill my family. They wanted to kill me.
After you had asked the people to go in the streets and protest. Why did you?
No.
Why did
You're
you?
crossing the line now.
Okay.
Where did I ask the people to get in the streets?
No, you said that people should demonstrate.
Where did I say that?
Okay, wait. Let me finish asking the question,
No,
because
no,
I think
no,
I'm
you're
still
crossing the line.
I'm still chairing the
crossing
interview.
The line.
Can I finish? Can I finish?
Crossing the line. At no stage did I ever incite anyone. At no stage did I ever call anyone to get into the street. So get your facts right.
On July 31st, if I'm not mistaken, you had a press conference saying that
which I asked people to go in the streets.
saying that ZEC should announce the election results.
So how does that amount to calling people into the streets?
Wait. Saying that ZEC should announce the results. Yet when you were in government, you gave a grace period of 5 days for the announcement of results.
How did I do that?
Didn't you?
How did I do that? How does the Minister of Finance give a grace period for announcing results?
No. Not in your capacity.
How?
As the finance minister, but
Yeah,
then in your capacity as someone who was in government, you had an agreement that election.
Agreement where?
Okay, so there was no
like
grace
that.
period for election results.
Of course not. Where did you get that?
I get that from some
Where'd you
of the
get that?
questions that I got before.
Where did you get that?
From
Where in the Electoral Act is there a grace period of 5 days?
not in the Electoral Act.
So where? Because the law is what governs this country.
But then just a minute, you were
Don't
saying
come
the
here
law.
masquerading
Just
as a journalist when you are clearly a political commissar from ZANU-PF. You are pathetic.
Are you done?
Yes.
So why did you flee the country?
They wanted to kill my mother. They wanted to kill me. They wanted to kill my brother. They shot at me. They ransacked my house. They ransacked the house of the friend I was saying beat up a 94-year-old mother. So my life was under threat and I left the country.
Okay. So since that period until now, there have been a lot of people who have been massacred. A lot of people who have had reports of being raped. What is your comment on that?
It's
Considering that
unacceptable.
you're an
It's unacceptable.
activist.
The government has no right to do that. The government has no right to rape our women, kill people. It has been doing that. And the regrettable thing is that Emerson Mnangagwa is only known and associated with blood. He's associated with Kukura Wundi, associated with 1st of August 2018. Now, post-12 January violence. That's not good enough. A state has no right to kill its people. A state has no right to rape its women. A state has no right to carry out what our own Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission has described as systematic attacks on human rights.
As an activist and a respectable figure in society, are there any means or any investigations that have been taken by activists or any awareness that has been taken to educate the masses on what should be done when they get themselves in situations where they find that there are soldiers or there are police officers knocking at their doors at awkward hours of the day, and where people get trapped?
In a normal country, you you go to security agents, you go to the police, but in this case, the police has been part of the perpetrators.
Yes.
So the citizen is nowhere to turn to. 2 years ago, activists, Mahia and others, brought an application in the Constitutional Court asking for the establishment of a committee under Section 210 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. That judgment has not been handed down. That committee is very important. It's an independent complaints mechanism that is so critical and essential for people to turn to when they're being abused. So the citizen is helpless. The citizen can't defend itself against attacks by the military. The citizen can't defend itself against the attacks by state security agents. That's why SADC needs to intervene. That's why the African Union needs to intervene. That's why the UN needs to intervene, because this government is committing crimes of humanity against an unarmed civilian population.
So as I have said earlier on, SADC recently said that they were giving their full weight behind President Mnangagwa. What else is left for the general citizens? Like, if SADC has already given its standpoint, where else can the general citizen, that lady in some community out there who is being attacked at this moment, where can she turn to get her voice heard and to get protection from the people who are supposed to be giving her that protection, but who seem to be terrorizing her at this particular time?
Unfortunately, she's at the mess of a rogue state. Unfortunately, she's at the mess of a criminal state. The human rights defenders that are around can do their bit. The Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights has been doing a fantastic job in defending people's rights, but it's not good enough. It's not good enough. That's why the UN Security Council must act, SADC must act, the African Union must act. Even the SADC statement you referred to, issued by President H.K. Ngob, recognizes that there is a human rights situation, and the region must act. The region must act. Failure to act is being irresponsible. It must act for 3 reasons. Firstly, when the Zimbabwean crisis implodes, each of these countries will feel it. South Africa in particular will bear the full weight of many of our citizens fleeing into South Africa. At the height of the crisis in 2007-2008, 5,000 Zimbabweans were fleeing and crossing crocodile-infested Limpopo to go to South Africa. Now, a huge number. There are now over 3 million people in South Africa. There are now so many Zimbabweans in Namibia, in Botswana, in Zambia, in Mozambique. So the region must act, if not to help the Zimbabwean people, but certainly out of their own selfish concerns. Because the truth of the matter is that the SADC community is in fact subsidizing the Zimbabwean crisis by bearing the weight, by looking after all these people that are fleeing from political and economic situation. The second reason why they must intervene is very simple. For the first time in the region, we now have the military threat. Since November of 2017, we had not had a serious military incursion, bar Madagascar, bar Lesotho. Now we have a military situation that was so seamless, that was so well executed. I can assure you that generals in South Africa, in Namibia, in Madagascar, in Lesotho, in Mozambique, in Angola, and in Tanzania, all the SADC countries would be carefully studying what happened in November 2017. And so any executive should be worried, because the region allowed a coup to take place in its midst, and it did not take a firm position. So the region is very unstable. The region is very vulnerable, as we have seen in the crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where for 2 years a president refused to step down. The crisis in Zimbabwe, the crisis in Zambia, only a few days ago, the leader of the opposition, Chiende Chilema, was shot in broad daylight by state security agents. The crisis in Lesotho, the crisis of democracy in Swaziland, and the crisis in Madagascar. It's a very toxic neighborhood, particularly when you compare it with West Africa. West Africa has been very strong. West Africa has dealt and restored democracy in the Gambia, when Yahya Jammeh refused to hold on to power and refused Adam Barrow to take over. They put order in Senegal when President Abdoulaye Wade was hanging on to power and wanted a third term. They put order in Liberia when Charles Taylor was hanging on. They put order in Sierra Leone when law lords and people like Saika Stevens were holding on to power. Now there's some order there in West Africa. They put order in Mali after the coup. They put order in Burkina Faso when President Blaise Compaoré was naughty and shot an unarmed civilian population. They put order in Cote d'Ivoire when President Baba refused to leave after losing the election to President Ouattara. So one wishes that SADC was as strong and as buoyant as the West African community.
Okay, so we have seen rogue elements in our communities hijacking what would have been planned as peaceful demonstrations against some government announcements, and we have seen those rogue elements attacking even civilians, because they're also civilians and they attack civilians, they loot and the likes. What would be your comment? Because at the end of the day, people melt down to the opposition and they become the pillar that is baggaged with all this, and that they are believed to be the ones who are committing these atrocities. Yet people in these communities know for facts that there are some rogue elements in within them who are also perpetrating this violence. What would be your comment, considering that it melts down that at the end of the day, you the opposition leaders become accused of such elements, even when people know that probably they're not members of the opposition or they're not inclined to any political party?
Yeah, firstly, there's a right to demonstrate in this country,
Yes.
petition,
Mm-hmm.
which is codified in Section 59 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe.
Mm-hmm.
And as the Supreme Court the Constitutional Court has held in the case of Dare and another versus Newbert Sawanyama, a recent judgment which was handed down by Justice Makarao. When someone gives notification in terms of the Public Order Security Act to carry out a demonstration, there is actually a duty to protect on the part of the police. So it's not good enough to say for the police to say shops were looted. The answer that must arise, where were you in order to protect property, to protect life? But what happens in Zimbabwe is that it is not armed brigands who take over. It is the state itself through its militias who take over those demonstrations in order to create an outcome. In 2018, come 1st of August, they did that. And by the way, it's not people who say the MDC is violent. It's ZANU-PF and the Herald. So don't confuse those two with the people. They are certainly anti-people. But the fact of the matter is that everyone knows that the MDC is peaceful. We've been having demonstrations as way back as 1999. The police have been able to control it, and we don't accept this recent phenomenon that the army is called on to protect law and order when the police on its own can do that. So essentially what we are witnessing is the capture, state capture of the police itself by militias, and that's not acceptable, and it's not good enough.
So the government has made attempts to talks of dialogue. They recently invited members of the opposition to come forward and bring about their terms and conditions for dialogue to happen. And your political party was not present on those.
Yes, we were not present.
What could have been the reason? Do you not wish for there to be dialogue for the people, for the betterment of the general citizens, that is, for the people that voted for you, for those 2 million votes that are behind you, that are languishing in poverty at this particular time, for an opportunity for you to table forward what you think is the best way forward for the country and for everyone?
We have made this clear over and over again. At the epicenter of the crisis in Zimbabwe is the crisis of legitimacy. Emerson Mnangagwa did not win an election. And because he did not win an election, the the tortfeasor, the wrongdoer, the accused person, can then not call for dialogue in respect of which he himself is the number one item on the agenda. He cannot be judge and jury at the same time. He cannot be player and umpire at the same time. He cannot be player and referee at the same time. Secondly, for you to have dialogue, the conditions that are conducive for dialogue must take place. Zimbabwe is a war zone. We have people that are in prison. We have people that are living in safe houses at the present moment. We have people that are running away from this country. So it's important, number one, that you create this conducive environment by, number one, demilitarizing the country. Number two, ensuring that you release all political prisoners. Three, ensuring that all persecutions and prosecutions stop forthwith. Four, ensuring that you commit yourself to upholding the Constitution and the rule of law, and you give an irrevocable undertaking that all the atrocities that took place between the 12th of January to the 4th of February don't take place. Number one, there should be no rapes, no assaults, no invasion of people in their homes, no shutdown of the internet. Next, this dialogue can only work if it is underwritten by the international community in the form of the UN, in the form of the African Union, in the form of the of SADC, and it can only be conducted by an acceptable international facilitator. Those are very simple requirements. Those are common cause. We don't have to have this debate because those are common cause. In 2007, we began dialogue. That dialogue was ushered in by SADC after it did a meeting in Dar es Salaam on the 29th of March 2007. It appointed President Thabo Mbeki as a facilitator. President Mbeki was acceptable to both parties, and SADC underwrote those processes. Why are we trying to reinvent the wheel and reinvent the wheel in favor of an imposter, an impersonator who has no right to hold on to the seat that he's holding on to?
Okay, insightful. Thank you very much, Mr. Biti, for joining us on the show and enlightening us on the financial and economic steps that could take Zimbabwe to a better place. I'm Margaret Matibiri, signing out.